Did you know that a little bit more than 500 mothers a year in the United States kill their own infant children? These are the actual cases of mothers who have committed filicide, or the killing of one's children, based upon arrest records and court cases.
All nurses to the nurses station.
Viewer discretion is advised.
What's your emergency?
May 15, 2021, the time 12:30 a.m. Where? Phoenix, Arizona police have just been dispatched to an apartment concerning a domestic violence dispute. There they find a husband and wife engaged in an argument over money regarding her upcoming move back to Japan. She was originally a Japanese native. Mrs. Inoue has threatened her husband with a meat cleaver, but police decide not to make an arrest in this particular case. This decision alone would come back to haunt the two officers who initially arrived on that scene. Now, Mr. Inoue, seeking to avoid conflict, left the home after police made the decision not to remove his wife or to arrest his wife. He decided to get out of there to end the fighting. Now, he would instead sleep in his car overnight in the parking lot of a bank where he worked the next morning. At least he would not be late for work. Mrs. Inoue and her husband had just recently filed for divorce in April, the month prior, but were still sharing the same house while living in separate rooms. Ms. Inoue had plans to move back to her native Japan, where she had family and friends. Now, police said the children were safe in their bed before they left the apartment early Saturday morning, and they were assured that everybody in that house was safe before they left. So they didn't just walk off with any kind of concern. But if they knew what was about to take place in that particular home, they would have never left without taking Mrs. Inoue in handcuffs, because this woman was about to do a horrible crime. Now, Inoue at this point loses track of about 4 hours after she locks police out of the house and checks on her sleeping children. At about 4:30 a.m. that same morning, Inoue says she awoke with bloody hands and saw her two children dead in a doorway of a bedroom. Now, Inoue then takes the time out to take a bath before driving to the police station, where she flags down an officer at the Apache substation shortly after 7 a.m. So she actually took the time to wash before going to the police. Her children have now been dead for about 4 hours. Inoue informs the sergeant in charge that she had been hearing voices in her head telling her to kill her own kids. And she did just that. Police responded to her home and discovered large amounts of human blood and severed body pieces near a bedroom. They found the bodies of the two young children partially covered by blankets and boxes at about 8 a.m. that same morning. Now, in a lot of these cases, you'll find when moms kill their children that they cover the bodies up. In cases where wives kill their husbands, you find that they cover the bodies up. The officers that responded to this call were not the original officers that were there the night before, but they will never be able to forget what they have seen.
You're watching MNN, the Men's Channel.
Both children's bodies had numerous defensive wounds on their hands. These were most likely caused during the attack with them grabbing the blade of the knife their mother tried to kill them with several times. The initial interpretation of this scene is that both of the children fought for their lives against their own mother's attack. Investigators on the scene saw cuts and blood on Inoue, Mrs. Inoue, that matched up with the scene entirely. Now, in Inoue's car, police found a bag with bloody clothes and a meat cleaver. Now, this is the meat cleaver that started this particular incident, and which they believe was used in the attack. At Inoue's hearing, Court documents said the cleaver had chips on its blade, so along the blade there were chips where she had hit her children straight to the bone. Now, police said this indicated it was a weapon used in that particular attack, and was missing from a similar set of knives and a knife block at the apartment. Further evidence on the mother aggressor showed Miss Inoue had bloodstains on her heel, shallow cuts on her fingers, and dark bruises on her hands and knees, where she was on her knees hitting her children with that weapon. She actually injured herself at the same time. Now, blood splatter was also found on the exterior suitcases seen inside of her car. Now, since the children were not killed in the car, could these suitcases mean that she was trying to flee the country? In the case, the presiding judge at her hearing set Inoue's bond at $2 million cash. He ordered her passport to be surrendered and said if she is able to be released, that she wears an ankle bracelet for electronic monitoring.
You're watching MNN, the Men's Channel.
Dublin, Ireland, Thursday, January 23rd, 2020. And Deidre Morley has been finalizing her plans to kill all three of her children under the age of 9 years. Deidre will conveniently await her husband out-of-town business trip over the next 2 days to accomplish her devilish mission. Her husband had no idea his wife was planning to kill the children, and in fact, throughout the time he was away, they kept in frequent contact, and she betrayed no signs of anything being wrong. Now, in a lot of these cases where the moms kill the children, they never show an indication up front. Now, but on that Thursday, she purchased rope from a hardware store with a view to make a noose. Now, which was not good news for the children. Her online searches that day included how to make a noose and a search for the N7 flyover, or, in Ireland, the Newlands Cross flyover, a bridge over a highway in Dublin. Her final search on the computer: the Poolbeg Lighthouse, which might have been a good place to drown the children and herself. That same evening, Mom attempted to sedate all three children and planned to suffocate them in their sleep. So in a lot of these cases where the mother kills the children or the mother kills her husband, it's done in the sleep. Now, her own son Connor was having a bowl of oatmeal before bed, and Deidre, his brother, was having Cheerios. So she crushed 6 to 8 morphine tablets to put them in the boys' food, calculating that they would ingest 3 or 4 of them at least. But the minute Connor tested it, he said, "What's that?" He didn't understand it. "What's that? That's disgusting." And he spat it out, which probably saved his life initially. Now, she also put a tablet containing codeine in Carla's purple sippy cup, her little daughter, though she believed Carla had not consumed much of it. That night, Deidre Morley fell asleep in her big bed, her 2 boys beside her. She felt relieved that it had not worked, that it had not worked out. She thought then that she would not go through with it, initially. Now, on the children's final morning alive, Dara, her son, was off a day from school with a cough, and Carla, her daughter, stayed home from her nursery. Now, Carla was playing with her dolls and toys at the time and asking her mother to play along with her. Deidre, at the time, was using his iPad and watching TV. But after a while, both children watched the Trolls cartoon together. Now, something that might have been cute and funny was not cute enough for the mother. It was at that time that Miss Morley pottered around and smoked some cigarettes outside of the house. But at midday on Friday, there was a minor argument between the children over screen time, which reinforced the mother's faulty thinking about her being a bad mother. So she had a problem psychologically that she thought everything she did made her a bad mother with her children. Now, Miss Morley had grown to believe over the last few years that somehow she had damaged the children with her own psychosis. She told Deidre she had enough of him screaming, and he responded that she was ruining his life. Now, she didn't need to hear that because she was right at the edge. Now, Deidre admitted to herself at that moment that she knew this was another confirmation that she needed to do her plan to kill her own children. Wow, that is odd. Now, it was at this point that she remembered looking at the clock on the wall, and it was about 12 p.m., and thinking, I just had to end our suffering, which meant that she would have to kill her children first, and then herself. So what did she do next? She separated the children into two different rooms and dealt with them one by one. As she suffocated her son using lengths of tape and a plastic bag, she said, "I wanted to stop it, but I didn't think I could." At 12:39 p.m., she got a text from her niece about being invited to a wedding, to which she responded, "I'm very excited." Wow. At that stage, Deidre was already dead. She had killed him first. She carried the bodies of Deidre and Carla upstairs. She realized Carla on the way upstairs was still breathing. Now, although shallow breathing at this point, so she held her nose until she stopped breathing altogether, until she died as well. She got in her car and collected her other son, Connor, early from school at about 1:50 p.m., much earlier. Why? Because she wanted to make sure that he was gone, meaning dead, before their father returned from out of town on his business trip at 4 p.m. So she had a 4 p.m. deadline trip for everybody to be dead. At Connor's school, she exchanged brief words with another parent and the school secretary. She was texting her husband about this time about his plans for coming home, and yet showed no signs anything was wrong. And there was no way he could pick that up. He was very, very close to his children. Now, he didn't think that she would ever do this, but there was nothing outward or strange at all in her behavior. Coming from school, she stopped on the way home so that Connor could get his favorite roll at Tesco supermarket. Now, at this stage, Miss Morley said she was already regretting what she had done, but she didn't think she could stop. While her son Connor was having his 15 minutes of screen time on his computer, she wrote a note that she would stick to a bicycle in the hallway for her husband to find. The note simply said, "Please, don't go upstairs. Phone 911. I'm sorry." Now, Connor's final moments were spent with his mother, watching Jurassic World at that point. So they watched the entire movie together. By now, she was wavering on her plan. Now, he was just being a really good boy at that stage, she said. She thought, "I can't do this. This is awful. But I have to do this because the other two are already dead," she thought. Now, she also thought, how would he live with that? How would he live knowing that his mother killed his own siblings? So she decided to play a pretend choking game with her son. She persuaded him to put a tape on his mouth and a bag on his head by pretending it was a game. She then said, "When I tightened the bag, I think he got frightened." "It's horrific, I know. It's horrific," she said in her police interview 4 days later after the killings. She remembers her son said, "Mom, stop." And I said, "I'm really sorry," when I later was asked by forensic psychiatrist Dr. Mary Donovan if she knew what she had done wrong. So the psychiatrist asked her, "Did you know you were doing that was wrong?" Ms. Morley replied, "I must have known it was wrong at some level because I waited for Andrew, my husband, to be away from town to do it." She remembered thinking, what if I don't die? What if I don't die? And that if she survived, she would have to spend her whole life in prison. So she was well aware what she was doing. Some people say it was psychosis, but in psychotic episode, you are not aware what you're doing. Now, after she had killed the children, she ingested at least 13 tablets and brought a half bottle of wine with her in the car. She left the house at 4:10 p.m. and drove to N7 Flyover Bridge. This lady intended to end her life there. At 5:10 p.m., there was another phone call with her husband, updating him on his timeline to come home. But the drugs took hold a little bit after at 5:35 p.m., and she crashed her car into a curb. A woman passing by in another car, Nurse Deidre Gorman, saw her slumped over the wheel and came to her assistance and brought her home to her house. Now, she says then that I don't remember anything else until I woke up in the hospital on Sunday. So she had went into a coma. But when Miss Ginley arrived home after 7 p.m., when her husband arrived home, his wife was collapsed outside of the house, being tended to by paramedics and members of the ambulance service, and nobody could tell him where his children were. He was desperately worried. Where are the children? Where are the children? It was when he found his own son Connor's body in the play tent downstairs. The court heard that efforts were made to keep Mr. McGinley out of the bedroom where Dara and Carla's body, his other two children, lay, but they were not successful. At that point, the level of distress was extraordinarily high. The court heard this. When Miss Morley came out of her induced coma, which the hospital put her in after taking the pills, Her remorse, guilt, and hopelessness at what she had done were immediate and overwhelming. So she felt bad. On January 28th, she told a psychiatrist, "I wish I had a time machine. I wish I had a time machine." She wanted to go back in history to undo what she had just done, but it was too late. So Connor, 9, Deidre, 7, and Carla, her daughter, 3, were found dead at their house in Newcastle County in Dublin, Ireland, in January of 2020. Their mother, Deidre Morley, was acquitted of all 3 counts of murder in the court by reason of insanity. So they didn't even reason that she had killed her own children. The judge, Justice Paul Coffey, said there was no contest about the verdict. The court had heard Miss Morley had a severe psychotic depressive illness. The judge of 10 men and 2 women were told they must be satisfied on the balance of probabilities that Miss Morley was suffering from a mental disorder at the time of the killings. Now, Justice Coffey described it as a sad and tragic case. He said the jury had to be satisfied that Miss Morley did not know what she was doing was wrong and was unable to stop. The court heard from expert witnesses called on behalf of the prosecution and defense, who were unanimous in their view that Miss Morley was legally insane when she killed her own children. Now, I imagine anybody would have to be insane if you can kill your own children. But to a lot of us, that is no excuse for killing children. The judge said there was no dispute between the sides, and so nothing to set against the doctor's opinion that insanity applied to all 3 counts. He added that the prosecution and defense agreed that Miss Morley should be found not guilty. The trial had heard evidence that Miss Morley believed she had seriously damaged her children because of her mental health problems and an issue she first raised with psychiatrists in late 2018. So a couple of years before she killed them, she said this was raised with her own psychiatrist. But she never told her husband and the children. They were not aware. Now, she continued to express such thoughts during the next year as her depressive illness became more serious, and that Miss Morley had masculine conditions from her husband, Andrew McGinley, and others. Now, the court heard that Miss Morley told Gardaí Irish police and doctors afterwards that she had decided to kill her children about 3 or 4 days before 24 January 2020. Now, 3 or 4 days. That's premeditated murder, not insanity. Now, Mr. McGinley told Irish broadcaster RTE that he accepted that his wife was not in her right mind on 24 January 2020. He said we had nearly 20 years together. His wife, he said, Deidre loved the kids, he told RTE Primetime. However, he said that he will never be able to break the connection between her and what happened. He said, "I'm going to struggle with that every single day. I really am," he said. Mr. McGinley said his focus was on keeping the memory of his children alive. This was a father that was extremely close to his children, as you can see by the numerous pictures we show you. Now, their tears, he said, their sadness, he added, but I can't just be tearful and sad all the time. For Filicide Detectives, until we see you again, thanks for watching.